This is a quick overview of the interface for Luminar AI. Currently at the top, you have your catalog, which is similar to Lightroom. I don't even deal with that. I just go to plus and add a folder or a single image. Next, you have the templates. They have automatically recommended ones based on this specific photo. And you can kind of apply those, or you can use your own. And any settings that you apply to an image, you can save as a preset. So down at the bottom here, I can click on save to whatever I've done on this image, and it'll save it as a new preset. What I don't like is it adds it to this list, as you can see, which just has a generic name, and you have to go in and manually rename each one, which obviously I haven't done. But yeah, so I need to do that, or they need to update it and allow you to give it a name as you're creating it. So yes, there's that. Anyway, let me just show you the edit interface, which is the main hub of it. So you have your essentials, which are your light is your basic exposure, tint, and all this other stuff. That's where you're going to do your basic editing. And then down here, we have the creative stuff, which is where you add skies and change filters and stuff like that. And then more down here, this is where the face AI stuff is. And this is where you can light a face or darken a face. And you can just kind of see how much we're adding. And it's just the face that's being masked off. So that's good. And then the same thing for the eyes and mouth. And I'll get to that in a minute. You also have on the right here specific areas if you wanted to add brush in something. So if I want to just darken one part of the image, I can just brush it in on an area. So let's see. So wherever I brush, it'll darken it up. You get the idea. All right, let me just reset that. And gone. Okay. Let me go back. Yeah, let me just go through the basics of what it does, and I think that's the most important thing. So the enhanced AI is actually pretty powerful. It takes a relatively dark background and brings out all the details. And so any kind of scenery, it'll bring out natural like leaves and stuff in the background. And it also cleans up the details on the subject. Let me just see if I can find another one that's a better demonstration of that. And this is the delay that I was talking about, where loading the image and all the effects on it. So I clicked on this new image, which has already been edited, but it takes a good 10 seconds at least for it to load. Granted, my computer is a bit older, so that's definitely a big part of it. But if I go, you can see my CPU is straining away right now. And there it's loaded, and it should die down on the CPU right here. Oh, it's still working, but I should be able to interact with it now. So let me just close that out. Okay, so if I look at the enhance AI, let me bring that down. You can see this is how it was shot. It's like really dark in the background, and so with the enhance AI, it really does a great job of lighting the room the way that you want it to be after the fact. So that's impressive to me. And then secondly is the structure, which is similar to clarity. So we can soften the background, and let me just zoom in a tiny bit more. We can have a nice soft background, and let me just bring this up all the way so we can see it. Or we can really show detail in the background, bring out a lot of texture, and this boost just enhances even more detail. So let me just go to the extremes. So you get the marble kind of feel really brought out in the background there. And let's just look at that with that off. So it's a dramatic difference if you want to bring out grit and detail. So I'm just going to turn that off for now. So those are two things in terms of really changing the background. If you want to really focus on the subject, then I'm going to leave the structure to minus something, which smooths out the skin in the process, and leaves the background subtle. Okay, so that's enhance and structure. Those are two new things, relatively new, that I imagine you'll be using a bunch. Details, pretty simple. I tend to focus on large details, and let me just zoom in a bit more. So even more than that. Wait for it to load. And yes, as you pan around, as you zoom, it needs to reload the image to display it in high detail. So once again, there's a delay. Hopefully that should be all gone once I've upgraded my system. Come on. Unless it's out of focus. I don't think it's out of focus though. Because it's not whirring away up there, which that's your like busy signal normally up there. Let me just see. Pretty sure it's not out of focus. In any case, yeah, details right there. So you can play with that. Oh, yeah, there it goes. Thank you. Um, so sky you can play around with, and they just have a bunch of skies to choose from right here. It recognizes there's no sky in the shot, so it's not going to suggest it. But all of these fine adjustments allow you to blend the sky with the scene, including reflections, which is pretty cool. There's also where you can add things to the sky, birds, rainbows, etc., which is pretty useful. Okay. Atmosphere is where you can add fog and other background effects to the image. And let's see, sun rays. I do use that for adding a sun, and I did use that on this image. I believe on this image. Let's see. So there was already sun behind him, and I just wanted to enhance that a bit. So I'll just demonstrate that once that loads. Okay. So let me just bring it up. Yeah, so you can really see that it changes the overall look of the image, and I'm just going to turn it on and off, and you can just check out like his pants or the scenery behind him at how it's relit with the sun added. So it creates a more shadowed foreground with the light coming from behind, so it really enhances that. You can change where the sun is just by clicking and dragging this, and you can see the sun rays moving through the trees, which is kind of cool. So I could technically say the sun's coming from here, but I'll just put this back here because it's the most natural place. And you can change how much the rays come through and how long they are. So play around with that. But yeah, I like a subtle thing, but I don't like the overall encompassing thing, so I'm going to bring back more of my natural lighting. So yeah, I'll bring that back down here, and we can just adjust. Okay, so that's the sun rays. Play around with that. This is the one I use all the time, mood. So they have all these different styles, effects, and you can kind of preview them. And there's like 3 that I find useful, and they are Manhattan, Beijing, and I forget the other one, but Manhattan and Beijing are 2 big ones. So if I take a look at what it does, this is before, this is after. Let me zoom in a bit. It tends to fill in shadows and crevices. If they have lines on their face or wrinkles and so forth, it's like almost a smoothing effect while lighting it. So let me just turn that off and on. You can just see the shadows under his, or the dark spots under his eyes, and little blemishes on his face tend to just kind of get cleaned up. So it's a nice overall effect. It adds a bit of a green tint. There we go. But overall, it's a pleasing effect, and you can just lower it down until you like where it's going. But yeah, so I find that's useful, and Manhattan was another one that's useful, and we just before and after on that similar, and you can kind of try to identify the differences. So yeah, there's that. So this is more of a soft glow effect, which I never use, and similar glow look. Once again, this is great if you're dealing with, women and the, blemishes and so forth. All right, to the face part. So I tend to use face light because it does a nice job of filling in where there's just like rough skin. That'll fill it in and just kind of clean it all up without any kind of skin smoothing. And also will fill in the shadows. You can make the face slimmer, depending on if that's something the client would appreciate. And that takes a few seconds, but usually is pretty accurate. Let's see what this comes up with. And by the way, at the top left, you can see the processing kind of light. I wish it was more of a progress bar so you knew when it would be done. There we go. So relatively realistic, although the top of his head is a little bit too big, but yeah, we'll bring that back. So for eyes, you can actually change the eye color, or you can leave it the original and do all the effects on the original, which is what I tend to do. But yeah, there's the blue eye color, and this is all without masking on my part, which is great. So let me just turn off all of the effects and just show you each one. So iris visibility, let me just go in a bit more. Okay, so right now this is regular as shot, and this is with iris visibility all the way up, and we'll wait for it. And maybe because it's already lit from the flash, I'm not seeing a difference. I know that the iris flare tends to add to the bottom there, like a catch light kind of a look. And let me just see if I bring the iris visibility down now. Does that make a difference? I've definitely seen a difference in other images, so I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it here. Okay, enlarge eyes does exactly what it says. So if somebody's squinting, it'll do a decent job of making them open, which is good. Eye whitening takes care of the whites of the eyes. So I'll maybe put it a little bit on that. Eye enhancer I use all the time, and that's just basically adding like a detail to the eyes. And depending on if his eyes are naturally light, so this is over the top. But for other people, it does a great job for brown eyes, for making them look cool. So for him, I would bring it down. Yeah, so that's eyes and dark circles. So it'll try to brighten up this area. Sometimes it ends up going into the eye, so let's just see what it does here. And it did a decent job, but yeah, part of the bottom eye seems to be adjusted too. Improved eyebrows tends to just sharpen this area, which I generally don't want it to do, so I leave that alone. And mouth, more for females, but you can increase the saturation. I'll just be extreme here. So it's more of an orange now, but if you want it to be more of a red, which is a natural inclination, there you go, and you can even darken them up. And that works obviously better with females. And the teeth whitening does a great job, so you just slide that to the right, and it'll fix teeth even with braces on. So I'm just going to bring that back. All right, so let's close that, and let's go to skin. So obviously we can see a lot of detail on his face in the skin. So if I bring this skin smoothing effect up, it does a pretty solid job of retaining detail in there. And I'm just going to flip that off. And that's it off. And this is it on. There we go. And so you can also say skin defects removal. And just pay attention when that's on, because I've noticed that it's removed some detail like in a shirt or something like that as well, or part of the nose. So just see where that actually applies. And if there was shine, which there really isn't on this, the shine removal will do a decent job of toning that down. The only shine I really see is on his nose there, which is very subtle. So yeah, I'm not seeing any difference with that. And then with the body, you can actually adjust the shape of the body and their belly area. So you can play around with that. All right, so that is your kind of quick, not so quick, look into it. These are more advanced adjustments, but I haven't even played around with them. Erase is useful for selecting and removing something. So let me just brush over something like an eye, for instance, that I want to remove. So I'll bring up the brush size, and so I'm going to select it. Oops. Oh, it was already on select. Sorry. All right, there we go. So I select the thing that I want to remove, and then I click on erase, and it processes, and it does the usual like content aware fill thing. And let's see how well it does with this eye. I found that it saved me trips to Photoshop for removing basic things. Yeah, so it does a solid job, and you can kind of clean up the edges there. So I'm just going to reset that. So yeah, that's your basic look, and when you're done with it, you can right click and export, or you can go at the top and export, save to disk all. But yeah, I tend to select them at the bottom and then just right click export. And you can export with different presets. So I have a high res preset, a web preset, and so forth. Adjustments is right here. You can copy Control C. So all the adjustments I have on this image, I hit Control C and then go to the next image and paste it. I can also select a bunch of images. And sync, so from this one image to all of them. So similar to Lightroom. So yeah, I think that covers all the bases. Let me know if you have any other questions.